Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art on Monday, October 7th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Doug Shear, ATOA President. Tonight we feature two highly accomplished painters with a shared interest in architecture, Richard Haas and Robert Neffson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doug. I'd like to show a few of my paintings and talk a little bit about them. The first one is Madison Avenue at 77th Street in New York City. And as you can see, this is really a portrait of the city and really a portrait of a plane of glass. It's mostly three-quarters glass. And it helped me get into the painting and see it abstractly as a series of shapes and images and forms going through space. If you go to the detail, you can see the Buddha there that attracted my attention at that point. This is the mid-90s. I was interested in Buddhism a little bit, but mostly I like the way this city sort of intertwined with reality and of the objects in the window. And the next painting is called, if we go to number 4, the next painting is Waverly. Yeah, there it is. And this is down in the Village. This is at the same time period. And this struck me immediately when I was walking down the street because, you know, if I looked in the window of the door, I could see in back of me. And if I looked through the window on the left, I could see through it. And I tried to give a sense of infinity going through space all the way up 6th Avenue there. And also a sense of time too, because you could see the scratches that time did on the door in the detail. Is there a detail? I think the next slide is a detail. Yeah. Anyway, so we go to there you can see some of the textural qualities that are in the painting. Okay, so we can skip the next slide.
So Robert, one question.
Sure.
I think many viewers of photorealist painting wonder what's the relationship with photography in creating the paintings.
Excellent. My training was really classical, and I started going to the Art Students League at 12, and then I went to get my degrees at Boston University. And in both schools, basically what I did was to draw all day the human figure. And so that was really what my entire art has been based on. And then when I got to the city, I started seeing the figure as a human being. I started seeing the windows as eyes and the forms as reflecting the way we live as a people. So, and I love photography, and my work was going anyway in that direction towards accuracy. And I was always interested in composition and measuring things. So photography was a natural way to get more realism and truth into my work. So that's how I got into photorealism.
So I know that the camera lucida and opaque projectors and so on have thousands of years of background in art.
Yeah.
Did you use any such tools in your rendering, let's say?
Absolutely. I use infinite amount of tools. Everything is done by hand, and I use a sable brush to do the painting, but I'll use grids, projections, and basically it's for placement. I mean, if you projected, say, the Mona Lisa or a great painting, you can never make it look like the Mona Lisa. So the placement and the proportions are worked on very carefully, and I use all sorts of tools. So
okay, thank you.
Hope that explains it. Okay, the next painting is Grand Central. If we continue forward. Oh, actually, this one is a recent painting. Well, it sort of shows you what's inside these coffee shops. And in this one, I was really inspired by Italian Renaissance painting, where you would see Caravaggio or Da Vinci, where they'd be sitting around a table. And here they're just ordering breakfast, and bagels is quite cool. And I thought it just sort of fit together nicely. You're trying to give a sense of movement and energy to these images. So that's quite difficult. So that's breakfast 18 by 24, 2024. The next painting is Grand Central. If we can flip the next slide. Yeah, this is Grand Central 2009. And it's the average size of my paintings. This is 50 by 68. And I was very interested in how these connections of people and the city come together. And that's why I emphasize the diagonals thrusting into the image. And Grand Central is a place where people come into the city, and it comes out as this sort of energy coming out of this sort of middle of the painting. I thought that was quite cool. And I figured a shoe store was kind of appropriate because you do a lot of walking in New York. So let's keep going. We have a detail of that, I believe. Yeah, so that shows, again, you can see the idea of looking into something and down and across. And I'm hoping this will open it up for people to see, see the city in a new way. And I believe the next painting is another version of Grand Central. Let's continue. This is a detail. That's another detail of the same painting. And I was just so fascinated by the life that goes on around that place. I would sit there for hours and photograph and draw and look. And, people would turn around to look at what was going on. It's just a wonderful experience. So a more recent view of Grand Central is the next painting called, if we can put that one up, next painting is, yeah, there it is, Grand Central Window. This is cropped. You don't see the entire painting, but it's another version of it, and it continues the idea. Maybe we should show the details of that. No, now it's all, oh well. Yeah, and I was just, amazed by the contrast of the modern limousine, and then the Art Deco details on top of the Grand Central is just wonderful to see. And the next painting should be 59th Street. The detail of Grand Central. Next one, please. Here we go. These are all cropped. Unfortunately, I took a lot of care in my composition to make sure things are balanced, but this doesn't show you the entire image, which is a shame. But in this one, I saw there you go. This one on the top right here, you could see a mirror reflection of the people on the street. And I thought it was kind of cool the way, another way you could show a different perceptual reality to the city. And you feel that this is Central Park South, obviously, 40 by 48, 1996. Okay, any other questions, comments? Let's go to the next one, 59th Street. Oh no, we did that. 56th Street and 5th Avenue, there we go. This one, I was attracted by the guitars on the left side and how they entwined with the buildings and the church on the left. I thought it was really quite striking. And on the right, I put some of my friends and people I know, and just try to get a feel of the city. So that's 59th Street, 1996. Next one, these are not quite chronological, but shows you ideas. This is the library, 42nd Street, library 2005 version. Again, this is cropped as well, but you can see I'm continuing the ideas that I've started before. Next slide, please. This is detail of the same painting. That's me and my dog in there. I'll often put myself in parts of the details of the painting just to identify with it, so I feel like I'm really inside that painting. Next, please. Yeah, it's a detail of the guy with the pretzels and the salt on the pretzels and people going by. But I arrange these compositions so that the eye is continually moving, and in the entire image, if you could see it, I hope you would feel that. Okay, let's keep going. This is Club Monaco 2003. And this is about 6 foot across. And again, it's cropped, but these are similar ideas. And I was quite intrigued by the sort of surrealistic feeling to the right side of the painting compared with the ordinariness of the thing on the left. Okay, next one. This is Tiffany's in 2013. This is 52 by 72, so it's quite large. And I would go there and I would just, again, it's cropped on the right side, unfortunately. because it's I worked so hard to get that right. But anyway, yeah, I thought it just sparkled, and I love the way the fashion on the left, if you go to the detail, sort of really abstracted things. And go to the next painting, next slide, detail of that. Thanks. Yeah, here you can see detail of the left side of the painting and very abstract series of vectors and shapes and people just all entwined. I think that was wonderful. Okay, and I think we can go to skip the next slide and go to the next full image, which is 57th and 5th. Here we go. Yeah, there we go, 57th and 5th. This as well as crop because you can see the Tiffany clock on the right. You should be able to see that and more on the left. But what the heck? Excuse me. This was a very personal location for me. A lot of things happened to me at this corner, personal and professional. And I tried to give it a feeling of a center of energy again. I think, do we have a detail? Yeah, we have two details of that. Maybe that'll help. Next. Next. Here we go. Maria, these are all being cropped. It's kind of a drag. That's better. On the left, it's, there you go. That's it. Thank you. This is New York City Plaza, and this is, let's see, New York City Plaza 2013, 40 by 74. And I was teaching at the Art Students League, teaching painting and drawing from life, and I would wait for my class, and I remember walking by at about 5 o'clock, seeing the light reflected in the Apple store of Central Park. And I thought, wow, I made a great painting, and I think it all came together nicely. Since this painting has been done, they changed the plaza countless times. I don't know why. Next painting, please. Yeah, these are details of New York City Plaza. Next. And you can see the plaza. And I love the energy inside. Okay, this is another full image. This is called, what is this called? New York City Apple Store. And you can see it on in the foreground down below, you can see people, you can look down into the, below the surface of the sidewalk, which is kind of interesting, I thought. And lots of reflections going on. It's a few details after that. Next, please. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is a new painting. This is called Bryant Park. This is full image, very good. This is 44 by 72, 2007. And well, Bryant Park's just a wonderful place. And I didn't have to do much. I had to like move the Chrysler building to the left so you could see it. And I had to organize things to the right, but I thought it'd get a nice feeling of a center of the city again. And I think there are some details of that painting in 2007. Next, please. Yeah, it's a detail of my wife and the dog and some people on the right side. And that gives you the idea of the paint quality, the application of the paint, and the flip-flop between, push and pull between the photographic aspect of it and the painterly quality of it. Next, please. I think it's another detail. Yeah, there's a detail of some kids playing and, typical scene. Okay. Then I get to Columbus Circle, which is how I used to, this is cropped as well, Maria, unfortunately. Can you get the full image? There you go. Yeah, this is a very complicated composition. I worked months and months and months on this one. And I would come into the city from Queens, where I lived, when I was a kid, and I would enter down the bottom at the foreground, and I'd go up, and New York would be spread out above me. And I think that was appropriate because Columbus was an explorer, and I thought that was a really fascinating composition. Okay. As a matter of fact, you can see a figure carrying a portfolio on the right, the steps, and that kind of was the way I would do it. I would just bring my stuff in and make art in the city. Next, please. Yeah, you can see the figure on the steps bringing the painting up, and there's like hundreds of people in this painting, and my dealer is in there somewhere, and people I know, and there's some street performers. So I thought it really gave the feeling of that carnival atmosphere that you get up there. Columbus Circle. Okay, very good. Then we get another version of Columbus Circle. No, that's a detail. Next one, please. This is an autumn version of Columbus Circle where, oh, go back, please. Yeah, this one here. This is, I believe, spring 2007, and this is autumn actually. And you can see the trees are bare, and there's a colder, harder light. But again, the energy of the people and the sculptures of the main statue are quite compelling, I thought. Next, please. How are we doing on time, Doug? Okay. Okay, can't hear anybody, but this was my original Columbus Circle ones. And you see, I tried to just get to the essence of a place and keep painting it till I really understood it. Next, please. These are some details of the previous full image. And you can see people interacting with the architecture. Next, please. These are still details. Okay. And then we get, and after this is a detail, and then we get a full figure, a full painting. This one here is Columbus Circle Summer. And this one was very successful, and people really responded to the breadth of the composition and how it really pulled you into it. And it was commissioned by a pretty well-known public figure too. But you know, I tried to get the sound of the water rushing by and sort of an oasis in Manhattan. Then I painted it. Keep going. Next painting. Next detail, please. Yeah, you can get a sense of the energy and how the weather, the architecture, the water, the people all sort of try to come together. Next detail. Next, please. Yeah, and this is a more recent version of Columbus Circle. This is 2023, 42 by 72. And you can see on the upper left that the slither buildings, the tall, high ones, have been added basically to the composition. And I've come a little bit closer and interacting more with the people at this point. And you can see some details in the next few slides. And I pick and choose the people to give a feeling of sort of typical things that go on there. In New York, you sort of interact with people shoulder to shoulder, whether you want to or not. I think that's the great thing about New York. Okay, so next one is Central Park Lake. And this is when I started really thinking, well, maybe I should just get into landscape, the landscape quality of itself. And this was 2007, 44 by 74. And I did a sketch first, and it just seemed like a peaceful sort of Poussin-esque French painting, and I thought I would try it. And there are two details that follow that. And I just arranged the boats the way I wanted to from hundreds and hundreds of slides that I took and going up there a lot. Okay, there's the right side of the painting, there's your detail. And it's just trying to get everything to work together and make a whole out of all these little, yeah, details such as the people and the boats. And really, I tried to keep the paint fluid and fresh and expressive. Okay, so then I started going traveling with it because, you know, after a while, mirrors and windows can get you so much. So I'd go to San Francisco, did a painting there, and that was kind of interesting. And I was quite interested in the space and how things wrapped around sort of spirals coming from the center. I think I'm in Sausalito looking straight at San Francisco. Next slide, please. That's 2010. Yeah, there's a detail of the bridge. Trying to get a sense of the energy and movement. Okay, then I went to Rome, where I spent a year on a Fulbright living there for a year right near the Spanish Steps. So I went back and painted it. And people said it was very cathartic for them. This is right after 2001. This is about 2004, and people said it was very cathartic for them and gave them a sense of peace. I think I have a detail next. Yeah. Okay, and finally, I get to my second favorite city next to Manhattan is Paris. I chopped a little bit on the left and get the full image. Yeah, there you go. And Paris, when I got there, I spent a lot of time there, and since I was a kid, and it's so horizontal compared to Manhattan, which is vertical. So my first major paintings, this was quite large. This was 86 inches across by 46 by 40, and I tried to thrust the viewer into the space using diagonals and horizontals that gave you the sense of being able to walk through Paris leisurely and just how it unfolds. And I'll show you some details as we keep going. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's people down the Seine. I put my beagle on the right, down the bottom, and some other people I know. But what can you say? It's just a very beautiful place. And I like looking down at things, looking down, looking across. Here is the detail of the people along the quay. Okay, and then I think I have some other versions of Paris. Next one is Paris Seine, and where is Paris Seine? It's 2006, 72 inches across, and everybody knows this site, but I tried to see it freshly and in the late afternoon, and this is where Paris began. And again, the river came together, and Ile de la Cité, and from that, the entire city grew. And you can see some details next. Next slide, please.
You talk frequently about in this presentation about bringing in boats, bringing in people, putting people in after most of the composition exists. How do you integrate them? It's oil painting. How do you integrate them? Is it difficult to do?
Very difficult.
I think.
Yeah. I go to a site over and over again until I really know the essence of it and I've sort of internalized it. Then I take hundreds of photographs and I cull through them. I go through Photoshop, and then I start, I take one major one, perhaps Keystone, and then I start adding and taking away. And I try to keep it documentary looking so the viewer can identify with it and step into the painting. But I really try to follow the rules of classical composition so it works,
Well, what I mean, Robert, is once you're on the canvas and you maybe have a grid pattern set,
Yeah.
You already have integrated these figures, or you brought them in at that point. Yes.
Good question. No, I mean it takes me like
because it would certainly be more difficult if you were trying to do it much later.
I can do it anytime. I studied with Philip Guston, and he taught me that paintings are changeable. They can change in a second like that. And if I knew where I was going exactly for the 5 or 6 months it takes me to do the painting, it would be a bore. So to keep the painting alive and my interest in it, I keep moving things around. And, it's quite great. It's quite a flexible medium. That's why people have been using it for thousands of years. Oil paint is amazingly flexible. Does that answer your question?
It's good. Thank you.
I wish I knew how to do it because the best stuff just happens. Okay, next, please. Yeah, this is the right side of the Seine. Yeah, and you can see people all the way over at Ile de la Cité eating ice cream and stuff. So get a sense of the detail. Not detail in itself, but because the world is complicated. And I try to be honest and show you what I really see. And if I just put it into, brush marks, it's not gonna do it for me. Okay, next painting, please. Next painting is, I believe, Ponce de Paris. This is Ponce des Arts, 2007, about 7 inches across. And left side was sort of a given, so that wasn't that hard. But the right side, I did do what we were talking about. And there's a guy playing a saxophone on the right. If you go to the detail, next slide. And the people listening to me, next slide, yeah. You see the guy playing the saxophone, and I tried, too much, go back, please. Yeah, and guy playing music and couples, interacting, and there's my dog again. And to me, it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's another detail. Here we go. This one. This is farther down the river. It's called the Mondarab. It's from the 7th floor of the Mondarab, and this one I wanted to get a sense of the speed of the Seine by the boat coming through, and the activity of the street level down below is really quite interesting. And then the bridge thrusting out to the right. I thought that was wonderful. And let's see the slide, please. The detail. Next, please. Yeah, and then wonderful like reflections on the lower right, and people opening their trunks and light reflecting, and just a variety of textures and life going on in Paris. Next, please. This is still the same painting. Yeah, here you go. And you can see people waiting to cross, people crossing, and it's just a celebration of the choreography of Paris and urban life in general. Next, I think one more detail. Yeah, okay. And I got a very close detail following that. Yeah, looking down at the dogs and the people. Okay, then we get to the next full painting, please. Next, very good. This is called Rue Dante, Notre Dame de Paris. And I was just walking down the street one day, and it just caught my eye like immediately. This is called Rue Dante and goes right to Notre Dame. And on the left, you go to the left bank. And on the right is a travel agency. I thought that was appropriate. And again, there's a Buddha, which I loved. And I love the feel on the left, especially because it gives you a sense of the light in Paris. And, you know, you get gray clouds and the sense of the wind going by. If you see the next detail, please. Next detail, there you go. There's the travel agency, Toulagie. And there I am in the middle of the sidewalk walking down. And next slide will show you the left side. Yeah, this is a wonderful cafe, I guess it's Cafe Dante. And I took a lot of care organizing where the people would be seated. And you can look into the bar and see the bartender. And then that's me and my wife on the walking down the sidewalk, and some people on the right I know, and just tried to make it alive for me. Here's another detail. Next, please. Yeah, it's just a wonderful sense of the weather in Paris and how you get that sense of the wind. Okay, then I think I go to Venice. Let's go to Venice. Yeah, next painting. Next painting is called Vaporetto. And I would go to Venice and I would ride the Vaporetto endlessly. And this is the back of it, which I made look quite large, but San Salute is on the left, and my wife is in the, you go to the next slide, please. This is really fun doing this one. Yeah, and you can, yeah, here we go. You can see people inside, into the Vaporetto, into the bus. This is a boat actually, but quite a nice feel, even though in reality it's quite a cramped space, but I made it feel larger because that's how it felt to me. Next detail, please. There you go. Yeah, there's my knee over here, right to the left door. And I would move things around a little bit. There's Santa Maria Maggiore and the left window, which is not really there, but I just put it in. Okay, next, please. Yeah, and I spent a lot of time in Venice, so I tried to get one painting that would sum it up. And this is from the Danieli. And I put the Vaporettos in the middle, so sort of the energy from those water buses would go out to the rest of the city. And I thought the right side, the diagonal on the right, separating the cafe from the street, almost looked like a train track, which was in the early days one of the few ways you could get to Venice except by boat. And so that reminded me of that. I thought that was quite interesting. Okay, and then I think we'll go to London. Trafalgar Square. Yeah, here we go. Very good. That's Trafalgar 2011. That's 74 inches across. And similar things are happening here. Let's go to the detail. I created this sort of storm on the right side. Here's some of the water on the middle, and the texture of the fountain was really important to me to get that. Okay, next, please. Yeah, you can see the pedestal on the, you see to the right of the fountain, the pedestal, there's a modern sculptor who they put on that column over there, and then the sense of what water did to the forms, I thought was quite fascinating. So let's see what goes next. The next painting, I believe, is 57th Street, which get back to New York. And this is 57th Street, looking towards Fifth Avenue. And my gallery had a space on the left. So I put Mizell Gallery on the left. Louis Mizell was there. And many of these buildings are gone now. But the main building in the middle was by 9W, and I thought that was very striking, the way the light hit that. And I'll show you a detail on the right. Next painting, please. Next slide, please. There you go. There's people walking down the street. Okay, and getting to the end here, get to Times Square, next, so a portrait. I'm on the right here, and I spent a lot of time deciding what posters to put in, and just a lot of time planning things out. There's on the left, there's a very complex souvenir store, which was endlessly challenging. And on the right, next slide, please. Yeah, shows you this is 2012, so some of these shows have closed, but I love the way that people were on the steps and how it flowed down, and how people just sort of compose themselves on the plaza. You know, obviously I'm picking and choosing what I include, and I'm trying to create a sense of how the city could be. And I did the same thing. I started going to museums after a while, and started at the Louvre, and realized that a lot of life goes on there too. And this one was begun by, let's see, the Louvre, this is 2009, 64 inches. And there was a person on the right putting her scarf around her neck, and it echoed the shape of the steps in I.M. Pei's beautiful architecture. So that's how that started. You can see the detail next. And again, to answer your question, Doug, I just I put people in where I thought they would echo the composition of the abstract forms of the architecture and fit in to create a whole. I love the people reading the maps. Next, please. Yeah, this is the Metropolitan Museum. Yeah, it's just about the full image. And again, I was just walking by the Met one day, and the light was absolutely perfect. And I looked in the ceiling, and I could see the floor below reflected. So that tied in with my need to open up the space with the painting. And next slide, please. I studied every single sculpture and tried to learn as much as I could about it, and tried to get them all to interact well with the figures. Next slide, please. This is a very large painting, by the way. It's 98 inches. Whoops, this is the wrong one. This is previous slide, please. Previous slide, please. Go backwards. No, I'm sorry, we missed one, but keep going. No, no, no. Next, there's a detail left side of the painting, and you can see people interacting with the sculpture in the cafe. And I'm at the top right with my wife here. At the top, you can see both of us looking down. Next slide, please. Is detail of the painting in progress. I thought it was just kind of cool the way this guy was echoing the shape of the leopard in sculpture. Next, please. Metropolitan height, 5th and 79 inches, and I always loved, I thought the Greek sculpture was the earliest photorealist sculpture that ever existed. Totally accurate. And the next slide shows you some of the qualities I was looking for. Next, please. Here I am to the right of the sarcophagus, or below the sarcophagus, and I was quite taken by the way the Central Park echoed on the floor of the Met. Next, please. Okay, here I am. And the next painting after that is the 5th century in the Met. This is 2019, and I tried to show two couples of different ages, young and old, so that it would echo what was going on inside the antiquities and detail. Next, please. I really wanted to paint a glass box, and this is a good excuse to do, and I was fascinated by this urn. Next, please. Okay. And next, please. This is a little bit. This is the American wing, another painting of the Met. Similar theme. And if we keep going, next, please. Just a bit, leave this one out. This is confusing. This is from the original Met. These got confused somehow. So Doug, these are details of the Met, the original one, the big one.
Right,
but
right.
they're not. Okay, let's keep going, please. We should be getting up to Mama. Here we go, Mama Garden. And this one on the right side, you can see people coming up the escalator. You can see into the right. You see somebody looking at a silhouette. And next, please. A detail of this painting. Next, please. Yeah, there's a detail of the people on the escalator, which I felt got a lot of movement. This is actually a small little painting of the Met. Next, please. Okay, and I don't see any other images.
So that's the end of the images. Yeah.
No, there are more. There's about 10 more.
Ah, okay.
This should be Herald Square, Macy's. We can stop there if you want. Maybe did you get the rest?
That's Columbus Circle.
All the way towards the end.
Uh-huh.
Here's a recent painting. We could just. This is the New York City Library. This is the annex. The library is on the right and looking down at the 42nd Street Library.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was spectacular. The way you can just walk in. There's a cafe there. You can go there and.
So this is from the 40th Street vantage point?
Yeah, this is the annex. It's I forget
Right,
New York Terrace. Wonderful place.
Mm-hmm.
A very complicated composition, and detail shows you Lord and Taylor's, which is no longer there, but
Right.
detail and keep going, please. Next, there you go. There's detail of that library painting. Okay, here we go. Stop here. This is Empire. This is called Empire,
Mm-hmm.
and it's from a roof in Midtown, and it's 79 inches across. And after a while, I just wanted to, just bathe in those abstract quality the city presented itself to. And I just love the way the light flowed across this painting. And it started a whole series of painting of roofs, views. The next one was, next please, was very large. That was 2019, 102 inches across. This is a commission by a European collector, and he wanted a painting of New York City in an airplane. And at first I was hesitant because I had lived through 9/11 and,
Right.
but, to tell you the truth, it was very cathartic, and I really loved the painting, and he was a great collector, and glad to do it.
Of course, that's an impossible juxtaposition, but
it was very surreal, and this is what,
right.
the way it turned out. I like it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Next, please. Yeah, then I did my own version. The next one, it's called Vanderbilt. And I put a smaller plane, which should be accurate, but I like the idea.
That's more believable there.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to get the sense of movement and the way the city spreads out, opens up to you. And I love Milton Glazer's townhouse in the bottom and the playground that he designed and the view up Third Avenue. and the view towards the Empire State Building and towards the East River on the right. It's just very, very abstract.
I
And
have that when we see particularly close-ups,
yeah,
details, and the work becomes softer in that sense.
yeah,
I see much more synergy between you and Richard. I
that's
see
right.
really a definite synergy, aside from the focus on architecture, a painterly symmetry, relationship somehow.
That's a very true point. I mean, that's why I included the details so you could see it because
Yeah,
uh, these are meant to be seen as paintings, not as JPEGs. So
right, right.
the best I can. Okay, so we can see a detail of that, and we're just about done. There's one more painting.
Okay.
That's detail, and you can see the figures in there. So they're quite tiny. Maybe they're half an inch big, not even. And I put people in the windows doing interesting things. And the final painting, I believe, yeah, this is morning walk, and I wanted to show what it's like to walk down, Fifth Avenue in a regular normal morning. And originally, the building in the middle was going to be on the left. They're going to do a second version on the left too. So I left a slight reflection there for the architect, but that doesn't really exist there. But I thought that well, I kept going up to this site, and I would see all these photographers going at a certain moment, about 8 o'clock, and that was when the light hit exactly. If you go to the detail next, uh, it hit the facade of the library, and I said, "Oh, this is very cool. There's something really exciting going on." Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Last one. There you go. No, 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 not that one. Previous. Next slide, please. Previous slide. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you can see the light hitting the doors on the in the library, and it's just a magic moment. They always have brides and grooms posing there, and people take photos. But it's really a wonderful sort of Stonehenge moment. And finally, it shows me working on one of the roof paintings. We could just leave that one out. That's about it. Doug, thank you so much.
That's great. So I think we're done with you.
Thanks. I hope that made sense. I hope it was okay. Hello.
Yes.
Hey,
I
Richard.
don't know
Hi, Richard.
you. Well, I'm very interested in this dialogue as well, and also by the fact that it goes back so long in history, not quite as far as I do, but quite a ways back anyway. And I'd be very interested to know what that history is about to some degree.
My history of Western art.
A piece of it, yes,
Uh,
for sure. And certainly the architectural aspect of it, or I guess
yeah,
I am called an architectural artist amongst other things. Uh, Certainly a public artist, sometimes called a trompe l'oeil artist. I fight that word and have for 30 years. But essentially, if you go through the whole of my career, it would cover a broader spectrum of what's been going on in the last 50 years of art and more. I started really as an abstract painter for a long time and had several shows in Soho in that regard back in the 70s. So that's also a part of my history. I don't know how far back you go, Robert, in that regard, but I know you've been out there for a very long stretch as well, right?
yeah, absolutely. I've been painting since I was 12 years old, and it's basically what I've done my whole life. And it's been a pretty clear progression towards painting what I see and dealing with abstractionism and trying to get better at it. And yeah, it's quite challenging. But I use architecture as a metaphor for personal, emotional states of being, and I try to transfer the best of them to people who look at the paintings.
Yeah, it's always hard for an artist to say what his or her audience is. I think that was one of the many things I struggled with very early on. I was a studio artist. I was a printmaker for much of that period, and very much, in my own studio most of the time. And it really wasn't until the early 70s that I began to see something happening both culturally and citywide and nationwide
Right.
that made me think of taking my art to a broader audience and really dealing with some of the issues of the city at that time. It was very important.
It's interesting because when I started, we would do a painting and you just run around trying to get a gallery. And finally, the gallery would put up on the wall and people would come in and look at it and react. Now, I would say 80% of the people that see my work see numbers that have been translated into pixels and they have that experience. So the presence of the painted object is gone. So the question is, do we paint? How do we paint nowadays? We have to paint for both, obviously, and make it work for both medias. Does that make any sense?
When you talk about pixels, you're talking about reproduction art of your art. Is that it primarily?
Exactly. Like we're looking at each other now, but I'm just looking at pixels, and it's different than looking at a human being, obviously. And with paintings, it's even more crucial.
Well, the artist has always tried to find a way of communicating and finding that audience and finding that very difficult track to it, to an audience that really matters. And I mean, the gallery system is what we both came into. And I think even that's being challenged on so many levels right now. So
Yeah,
everything is always kind of up for grabs on a certain level.
yeah, absolutely. And that's why, being an artist working in your studio alone is really a luxury. And you have total freedom, and it's a great thing. And I think for artists nowadays, it's so easier to get your images out there. The problem is there's just a flood of images, and there's you know, nobody to edit what goes out there. So I'm really thankful for, a platform like this, which, can show our work.
Well, I'm not sure how easy that is. I mean, for me, it seems to me that let's take YouTube as an example. I mean, the flood is endless. You know,
Yeah,
the stuff that you have to wade through is endless. Even the gallery system, as we know it today, versus that which I knew decades ago, is endless. And you have to work your way through all of these things in a very different way today. Uh, I'm not sure, that anyone can take in more than a small fraction of it, and yet we try to be as able to understand the spectrum and the scope of it as much as we can, but it's more and more difficult. I mean, thank God I can still walk, which is very important, and I can get to studios. Mostly I can get to galleries within walking distance. There are at least 300 or 400 of them that are within that range. And I certainly don't see all of them, but I try to take in a steady kind of series of shows as they occur in these various
right,
galleries.
right.
And I go to these shows like at Javits recently and
Yeah.
those various places and take in that, which is even more crazy in some ways, trying to absorb all that.
It sounds like,
Um,
yeah, that's exactly what I've been doing too, Richard. And it also sounds like my relationship to New York City and other cities, Paris and whatever, is when I was younger, I could walk for, miles and miles and miles, and that became part of my painting and the sense of space and what I could do with the city. And now I'll be in a cab or something, and I'll be photographing through the cab window. So it's a little different, but we like you say, we both sort of adapt to these new situations.
well, you do really see the streets, and they're very specific parts of New York that you focus on, as I can best tell. And, I think that's an important aspect of it.
Yeah,
I also,
yeah, please.
basically with my immediate environment, Soho, and I saw that particular area as the starting point of so much of what I did. It expanded, and eventually it took me to 5 continents, where I saw a lot more than just what you can find in the city of New York or in even other American cities. But
Yeah.
this incredible interest in and fascination with the history of architecture, the history of cities, and everything that's involved in between.
Yeah. And, I sort of go with Rembrandt, who never left Amsterdam, but somehow he got connected with what was going on. He would go to the auctions and he would see Caravaggio or someone. And in a way, I'm perfectly happy in New York and Paris and London. That's it for me, It just sort of opens up. And you have a different, feel for life than I do.
Well, I was always looking at the past, the history of art as seen in, mostly the Western context. For instance, the architectural history of painting that goes back 400 or 500 years. And I even, got involved in collecting some of that, like many Piranesi prints, which you could use. You used to be able to go to the bookstore and buy for less than $50.
Yeah.
And, I managed to get quite a few of those, and just building up an interest that way too. And relating to past art that dealt with the city and dealt with architecture is one of the many things that I have always taken in. And then teaching printmaking for like 20 some years, and trying to interest students in looking as not just architecturally, but at everything, and seeing how they can bring that to the plate, the stone, whatever they're working on.
Yeah. And I mean, I lived in Rome for a year, and I would walk around that city, and you would feel the ghost. You would see it everywhere, the history of that place, and it had a tremendous impact on me. And and also the way art was a part of everyday life. You'd walk into some, little unknown church, and you'd see the art, and you knew that it was part of people's lives. And when I get back to New York, I kind of found my own little, sanctuary, Soho and 57th Street. And I'd go to these galleries, and art is everywhere. And it's a wonderful thing about it. It's just people really need it.
Yeah, but you really do have to focus, don't you? I mean, you have to learn in your own how to become the best editor of what's out there and what's about. And I mean, I found that to be a very important part of looking, and also making my work, choosing, and somehow becoming the decider of what I think is of more significance than something else, because it is endless, and it is a cacophony of chaos primarily.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is to make some sense of it,
Yeah.
and to record it. I think the recording of a particular place and a particular time is very key to what one should try to do.
Yeah. It's a precise, perfect moment. And it's the eternal reoccurrence. There's something about the most mundane photograph or the most mundane thing you might be looking at that, in theory, you could find the most beautiful thing there, and it could change your life. And it's just, I think it's our inabilities as people, and it's our job as artists to try to get the tiniest bit of that across. For me, when I walk around these cities, I'm looking for a safe place. I'm looking for a place where I can have a long, careful study of life around me. And I try to communicate that to people. And you've done that with your murals. You create spaces for people that make them feel, part of the community. So I guess we're both trying to do the same thing.
Well, my murals have gone through quite a transformation over time as well. I mean, from the very beginning, I thought of it as pretty straightforward and didactic. A building was lacking a facade, and I finished that building with that facade. Okay. And that was because there was so much in the city that had been sort of torn apart bit by bit, sometimes in a very radical way. And I was using something of a solution to trying to stitch back some of the cohesiveness of what I felt the city needed more of.
Exactly.
And that was the beginning. But as it went on, I got more and more interested in bringing many other things to the process. And I said, well, you can start to tell a story in these murals and on a building, and sometimes in more than a building. And I think the first one that I did that really sort of brought that about, I guess that'll come about maybe in a progression of slides later or pictures later, was when I went to Boston, and there was the back of an architecture school that was built in the brutalist period. The brutalist period, for those who are not too familiar with it, was architecture of the 60s, primarily 50s and 60s, when they were using mostly poured concrete to create these very harsh structures. And that was one of the softer brutalist buildings around, but it hadn't been finished, and the back was just chopped off. And it was like a canvas in the back of this very interesting building that served a purpose. It was an architecture school. And so I started by working with it as a facade, but gradually said, no, I want to carve into this space. And so I created a fantasy of what that space was or possibly would have been that was not there. And that became a very interesting sort of avenue toward a whole other kind of history of my work after that.
It's amazing. I mean, I told you this story before, Richard, but when I first came to Soho and I was schlepping around looking for a gallery, I saw your mural on Prince Street. And I said, this is the place I want to be, because it generated a sense of creativity and openness. And I guess, I really liked it. I still like it. I'm glad it's there.
Well, it lived and died and then came back. Now, that's the whole thing about public art, is especially outdoor art, is that it has to fight for its own constant existence. It comes, it sort of deteriorates, gets torn down, it comes and goes, and sometimes it comes back. And I felt that particular one was so key, not to just my own personal history, but I think to the neighborhood and the city, and a lot of what it did for architecture and painting and public art in general, that it had to come back. And with the help of this person sitting to my right, managed to raise a significant amount of money, starting with a very generous offering from actually a developer, one who I knew quite well, David Walentis, who started a little area called Dumbo, if you know it, amongst many other things. And he called me the next day after an article appeared in the New York Times. He said, Richard, I think we should have something, we should help. Something has to happen, something has to come back. And he said, and I'm going to give you a check. And the check was a 6-figure check. And after I picked myself up off the floor, then we went on and continued to fundraise with some more very significant and very small offerings all over the place to get the project done. And I won't bother people with the 8 years of struggle that went on in between, because today nothing is done or redone in this. It's crazy kind of struggle that one goes. And we got it painted, and it came back last fall, and now I think it's even better than it was in 1974.
And the thing is that you really had to fight for it. And I think the same goes for artists everywhere. I think that one of the big misconceptions with my work is that it looks easy. because I try to make it look easy, but I don't show all the effort and months that go into making one painting. And, and because that's not my intention. And just like, you knew what your intention was with that mural and you fought for it. And I think we all have to do that. But you just don't want to bore people that look at the paintings or the murals. You want to, give something insightful and entertaining.
Well, but that fight is secondary to the fact that once it's there, it should live on its own, and people really are not interested in that part of it. I mean, I think maybe one exception was Christo. Always made the struggle to get things done a big part of his art.
Exactly.
And it was, anyways, one of the most interesting things about his things. And also the fact that they were so temporal. I found that very interesting as well. Yeah. Now, I know my work is temporal. I mean, another rather famous public artist who I knew very well at the time said, Richard, you're going to put them out in the rain and they're going to get wet. And this is just part of the nature of anything that you have to put out in nature and street. Yeah.
Yep. And, life is flux. Things change all the time. And why would you even expect things to remain the same? It's just, we're lucky that we have these abilities to grow. It's great. But painting sort of stopped time for a little bit. But, even the Mona Lisa is going to disappear one day. You know that.
Well, but you doing things in the studio and, doing things that are, more private and personal have a different life entirely than these things out in the street. I mean, those are really two very different worlds, even though they overlap from time to time.
Yeah.
And so how do you go about, perusing the city when you know and know it so well, and yet have to find something that you can focus on that you're going to spend months and months documenting?
Yeah. I mean, it's a torturous path, and you have to fall in love with a certain site and sort of preconceive in your mind a finished painting. And but it can't be totally preconceived because that would be no fun to spend 6 months on it. So I just sort of look for a place that's right, and it's very hard to verbalize on how it happens. It's very intuitive, and I look for things like glass that help me see things freshly and reflect things in a different way, and sort of I listen to writers and philosophers and artists who have done the same thing, and how have they made us see things freshly. And I try to do that to the city. And this is the point where I should show you my work, but I can't do it tonight.
Well, unfortunate loss here.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I found it almost in any case when an artist is doing a talk, say, and now let's go to the the images, period, because we really see and talk almost through images primarily.
It's sort of a verbal geometry and what to express in English.
So I don't know how we're going to do this in terms of that. Am I going to show mine now? Or
yes, I think that's good.
You want to show yours? You don't want to show yours first, Robert?
I'm not able to.
Oh, no, I mean, but they can put up the view that they had in
the 5 images,
yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't that make sense to have a focus on that?
Yeah.
Because they're super detailed and people should have the option to have a good look at them.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, I can share right now then.
Thank you.
All right, are you able to see?
Yes.
Columbus Circle.
Okay. Right.
Can you zoom in?
Can you zoom into these images? There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not reading for me.
Oh my God.
Hello? Hello?
Tell us something about these images, Robert, please.
I'm having trouble viewing them, but I can see Columbus Circle. And Columbus Circle was my entry to the city. I would come up from the subway down there and I'd go up and I'd see these amazing paintings. And I walk over to the Art Students League, and that's how it all started for me. It was an aspirational place, but it's difficult to talk about when I can't see what you guys are seeing.
Well, I could see it from here. Should I comment on it? You know, I know that circle very well, and you presented in this very broad and expansive way, and very focused on the new circle as it is, with the fountains, the people sitting around the statue of Columbus. Of course, we know a lot about the history of that statue too, don't we?
Yeah.
There was a wonderful public art piece where they built
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
a box around it practically where you could go up and sit with the statue, right? Remember that? It was a public art fund project.
Absolutely, it was amazing. But I think
Yeah.
I think I was drawn to it because it's sort of a center of the city, of that part of the city, and you have all these vectors of energy coming right to the statue, and then you have this calm, piece of the sound of the water and just the people feeding into the city in a very ordinary, wonderful way.
Let's go to another image. This is 57th Street.
Let's see if I can find it on mine. That's the one at 57th Street, and my dealer, Louis Mizell, had a gallery there. If I can find it. It was on the left side. And so I included that in there. But it was about, the energy of 57th Street and what I could do with it as a painting.
Yeah, I've dealt with that street myself on many occasions.
Yeah.
Nothing dramatic as this, but
the architect of 9W, Bunshaft, was just, he did another version of that building on 42nd Street. And you can see this one is to my mind, just much more successful. And it just sort of sweeps the entire sky down into the street and into the energy of the people. It's a great piece of architecture. And I think all those townhouses are gone now, by the way, except for the natural bookstore.
that one right next to it, actually, as I recall.
Yeah, like Rizzoli used to be there, and Hammer Galleries. I used to show my paintings there too.
To the next.
Okay.
Vanderbilt.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying before about trying to see the city in a fresh way. So I go on top of a roof, which I've been doing since I was a kid, and everything looks different, And what happened here was I just love the way the East River and the Empire State Building were sort of encompassed together, and the Vanderbilt was there, and if you look at the bottom right, there's a wonderful playground designed by Milton Glaser, who used to live in that little townhouse down there, New York Magazine. But I think more than any of that anecdotal information is really just this abstraction of form sort of hurtling at the viewer, which really makes me feel, at least I hope it makes the viewer feel the energy of the city. And I hope they don't fall off the edge either.
Next image, please.
Let's see.
The pyramid of the Louvre pyramid.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, there's a woman. I was down there waiting for something, and this woman was twirling a scarf around her neck, and I said, "Oh my God!" It's like it echoes the shape of the staircase, and that sort of led to a composition of figures that would enforce that feeling and bring life to this space. In actuality, it's a zoo down there, but I tried to clean it up a bit.
Next image. Is there another? Yeah, there we go.
Which one is it?
Madison 2000,
Madison or what?
in the year 2000.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That was what I was trying to say about using a large sheet of glass, like more than three-quarters of the painting um, is a glass. And so you're really seeing in back of you and you're seeing in front of you. And it just seems like a wonderful way to see the city. It looks like it's on a computer screen almost, but it's really the way it looked.
Is that the final image of this group?
It is.
Yes, it is.
I have 100,
Yeah, there
I have
were five.
114 more, but we can't access.
Right. Well, they'll rejoin.
Okay.
Ultimately, it will be rejoined. I
So-
think we should go to Richard's.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm taking you through a combination of various histories here of my work, and it really begins with my print series primarily. I've looked at the city and documented it with probably over 100 some prints. And I think these two here are sort of quintessential examples of capturing the city in 1980. And
You
we know,
want the next?
yeah, the next one.
Oh, let me see how we do this.
How do we-
Here.
Okay, there it is. Day and night view. I had a helicopter that went around and looked at, various aspects of it, and actually managed to revisit that almost 20 years later, and did another print, which I think I'm not showing, seeing how it looked. And of course, it was in 1999. Had I gone back later, we know what would have happened to that view. So this is kind of the last aspect of seeing the World Trade Center as it was and how it really dominated so much of downtown Manhattan. And of course, I really, have followed the important buildings of New York, and this is kind of the mother lode of buildings in New York, the Flatiron. And I've done it in paintings and drawings and prints twice. This was the original one done about 1973, and it's part of one of my first shows of printmaking at Brook Alexander, which was then in the upper 70s. This is actually a painting, and I'm not sure why I slipped it into this particular thing, because really it's a study for the series of paintings and that I did for the New York Public Library, the periodical room, where there are 14 murals based on the history of periodical publishing houses in New York City, starting from about 1830 up. And this, of course, was the statement that created Times Square. And that was the Times building as it was before they skinned it. They took all the skin off of it and made it into the Allied Chemical Building for a while. It was the ugliest thing you can imagine. And then that later became nothing but a big framework for advertisement, which is, I think, what it still is today, though they're reworking it again. How we doing?
Oh, fine. Light it up here. I wanted to hand it to you.
Oh, okay. I did, several works of both prints and small paintings of, great apartment houses. Like this is the Dakota. I did it before the unfortunate incident that happened there in about 1980 or 80s, early 80s. Was it 81 or 2 that he was shot? And John Lennon was shot in front of it. Okay, and then a series of lithographs, and this is kind of one that I think says a lot about central Manhattan, as well as, New York City, as well as the combination of very different architecture within that frame of that part of the city. You have Okay,
Want me to go back?
no, that's okay. This is the view out of my window here on 36th Street as I saw it for about 20 years. Then they decided to build a 40-story apartment building behind me, and that view went away. And so this is capturing something I can no longer see out of my windows in the back. But it shows, of course, the New York Times building in the center background, as well as several others in the foreground. The other side note to that is upstairs for me for almost 30 some years was Philip Perlstein, and he also used that same view as a backdrop for many of his paintings when he was working, and he lost it too, and we were both pretty upset. This is a view of Times Square. This is actually a painting on wood, and it's an actual accurate view of most of the building, except the foreground is actually what I see out of my window to the left. I sort of displaced some of those elements and brought them into the foreground of that piece. And here I am looking down 42nd Street. There's a theater there, 24 plex. I would often go and look outside from, and this is kind of what you see in, night view of 42nd Street with that kind of little finger sticking out. That's Madame Tussauds advertisement in front of it. And then 53rd Street, this one here is, I've done many views of 53rd, another street that's constantly changed, but it's one of the more interesting ones for me in the combination of things there with the Citicorp building in the background. This street no longer exists, or half of it is gone.
Yeah.
It's right around the street for me, and it's the building on the left was already slated to be torn down, and that's what you get there is that covering with mesh before they start to deconstruct the building. And in the background, you have the bridge that went between what used to, I think, be Gimbals, and another building in the background. That's still there, but even that was slated to be torn down. Now there's a big discussion about what not to do in that area. It's my neighborhood, so I'm very involved in it. And they're talking about not building 50 and 60-story buildings all the way around Penn Station, and maybe coming up with a different solution. So that's part of my neighborhood. Going back quite a bit earlier, and I was in 73, and this was the street that I knew, and every day my studio was about a block and a half north of these facades, and that was the area that first grabbed my attention architecturally in New York. I've just studied them one after the other and did many prints of them, drawings of them, and eventually did that facade painting up the street. And there it is. This is actually the replacement part for the early one from 1974. This is the way it looks today. Yeah. And I had a painter, wonderful guy, who actually started as almost a graffiti artist in his earlier days, and it now has a company which does some terrific mural work, and he's the one who, along with 4 or 5 of his helpers, got it done in a matter of several weeks. This goes back a long way, 1976, and it's Peck Slip. Somebody I think is
In the chat.
in the chat that says they lived across from it. It was a very interesting building for me to do, and it was a challenge. There was a contest between me and 3 other artists to come up with drawings. We were all given a fee, I think, of about $500 or something, I don't, to come up with a solution. And I, because of its site and because of all of its history, I thought I had to really take this on in a major way. And this is what I came up with. That was repainted. This is the repainting of it. After the first one, we had to repaint it because they broke through the wall after 2001, pulled out all of the electric generators inside that building, because that's what it is, and then re-bricked it, and then we redid the whole thing. And here we have up on 83rd and York, which is Yorkville. And of course, Yorkville, German area. Well, what you need in a German area is a glockenspiel. And so this is the glockenspiel for Yorkville that you see in that little side edge there. There you see it again. The lower part, yeah, there's a close-up. And of course, you know, unlike the one that's in Munich, where, you know, the figures come out and dance and then kind of go back around, or similar one that you see also in Venice, I decided to put New York cops kind of turning around. And then in the bottom part, there are all these little, you know, details, because there's a children's school right next door, and I think they needed something to kind of relate to when they walk by. And of course, inside is a laundry cleaner, and I think a seamstress and whatever else.
Yeah, dry cleaning.
Dry cleaners, yeah. So that's where the sewing machine comes in. This building was in St. Louis. I was taken to St. Louis and by some people that had the largest shoe company in the country at that time, Edison Brothers Distribution Center. They had about 6 million pairs of shoes in this building, right? And they said they wanted to do some imagining of it, and some for weather proofing, etc., that they were going to address the entire building. And they gave me the option of covering over certain parts of it, because when they said they wanted me to deal with the building, I said, there's no canvas here. It's just, you know, bricks and glass. I can't figure out what to do. And they said, well, if you can come up with a design that will, you know, not take away most of the windows, but maybe some, then we can talk. So that was what we did. And now you see, I took away about 300 windows around the building, and we did the whole building. It's about, you know, you can see the size, almost the size of Macy's, you know, a part of Macy's. And that was a pretty interesting and challenging project, to say the least. You get some idea of the scale of it. There you can see the workers working on it, right? It's still there. What happened, they were going to tear it down. They were going to make it a parking lot, a very popular thing in cities at that time, parking lots. But somebody said, no, you should save it, and I can deal with it. If you give me a tax write-off, he said, I will turn it into a hotel and apartments. And that's what he did.
It's a Sheraton.
Yeah, it's a Sheraton on the left and apartments on the right, and the top was a big, you know, sports place, so they didn't need the windows. Now it's being redone again. I don't know what's going to happening to it, but it's in play, which is what happens to many of these projects over time. This building here was an adjunct to Kroger food headquarters, and initially it had nothing but, you know, that one finished area, and all the other areas were blank. And so what I decided needed to happen was that I would finish the building in a much more dramatic way. And this is what we end up with. Now remember, 85% of this building is paint. Only the left portion is real. And of course, it's in a monument to Cincinnatus. And a lot of the people in the city of Cincinnati had no idea where their name came from. And I did some research. It's well known, of course, but it's still interesting in that Cincinnatus, the Roman general from about 450 BC, was a farmer who decided to become a general who saved Rome and then went back to being a farmer again. And a guy named George Washington was totally enamored of him as a person, saying, this is like me. That's what I want to be identified with. And so after, he was, after the Revolutionary War, he started a society called the Society of the Cincinnatus. It still exists. Not very popular, but it exists. This is Chicago. Many buildings in Chicago were like that at the time, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, because they were built in the 20s, and then they were going to build all around, and nothing got built, and it just sort of stood there raw, looking like that. And in the 1980s, an architect who I knew wanted to, along with his cousin, who was a developer, was turning it into apartments, and we were able to brick up both north and south walls, come up with these two end wall facades, and also the whole back, as you saw it before. You want to go back?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that the back area had the windows, but it was basically, not a finish, but raw. And so I put what I call Chicago Bay windows in three parts in that area. And then on the two ends had these very tall pieces. And of course, they were homage to Louis Sullivan, primarily, with a few other additions. This one here is Adolph Loos's proposal for the Tribune Tower in 1922. I thought that could come back too as a sort of shadow reflection. Yeah. Now that's a blank wall. We had to cover about 80 windows in the hallways of that building to get the blank wall. And it's the side part of the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami Beach. And so we turn it into this. As you come up Collins Avenue, this is all you see for about 3/4 of a mile.
So,
But you don't see it anymore. It was torn down about 20-some years ago after much discussion, much protest, and even flying the artist, i.e. me, the owner flying me down and saying that he was going to get rid of it, but that he definitely wanted me in on the replacement project. And of course, that was all BS, which I knew it would be. And it went away, and that was the end of it.
this is your last one.
This is in Fort Worth, and it's an interesting history as well. This building was just the back of a building. They had torn down the rest of the block, and it was kind of a raw back. We re-cemented it, and I sort of turned it into an homage again. And in this case, it was to the famous not Stampede. It was called the cattle drive of the Chisholm Trail. They left Fort Worth and drove the cattle something like 150 miles north, because there was no railroad as yet in Fort Worth at that time. It was a famous cattle drive, and this was kind of depicting that. And the building in the background was the original courthouse as it was in about 1860. And you also have that on the side, some other elements that kind of play to the architecture of the front of the building, which is a sort of homage to Chicago school style. And then the foreground, first it was a parking lot, and it was for almost 20 years a parking lot. But then in the redevelopment of downtown Fort Worth, they made this beautiful dancing fountain. You can see it not dancing at the moment, but it is often just, a very, active fountain area. And if you know the weather in Fort Worth, a lot of people go there in the summer and they just hang out.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
I think that's what I'm
Yeah,
showing.
that's it.
Very nice.
So it's a small part of my project history, and I think gives you something of the range.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Wonderful work.
Yeah, beautiful.
I don't know. Can we open open this up for?
Yeah, there's a question
Comments and
here that
questions
says,
or not?
did they save your work for the downtown jail demolition?
All right, it's a question about one that I didn't show, is that,
Yes,
yes, uh, the, what I call the Tombs Project. I don't know how well it would be for me to talk about it when we don't have any images of it, though.
well, but they asked, the answer is they couldn't save the part that was painted on the wall, but they made an aluminum repro of it, which is in front of the entry to the jail, and sometimes even when celebrated people under indictment or going to court turn up, you'll see them
Are you
there.
talking about a certain individual?
Yeah, there are many individuals. I'm not talking about anyone in particular.
Right, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah, last summer, he was in front of that wall every day.
But they did also, they did put on Rikers Island the 4 bas-reliefs that were on the bridge, on which Kit Yin's Snyder's artwork was on
Yeah,
top.
there are 2 artists.
And
in
Kit
this
Yin's work has
They're
been
both-
saved entirely, but all of it is residing in a warehouse at Rikers Island, which gives us some comfort, you can imagine.
Well, it's appropriate.
Would you like to take more questions? Okay.
Why not?
What was the relationship, if any, to the city walls projects? I guess it would be mostly for Richard in this case.
Oh, you're talking about the first project, right? Which was City Walls project? Yeah, that was
Right.
started before, yeah. Well, I could tell how that happened because I think it's interesting and I think it's important. I had several ideas for putting murals on various blank walls all around the Soho area. And I did them on photographs, black and white photographs that were enlarged and, you know, like a before and after. This is the way it is now. This is the way it could be if you put this facade back. And I took them to Paul Goldberger, who was a friend of mine. And we met at the Spring Street Bar, which was a place everybody met at that time. And
Right.
I showed them all to Paul, and I said, and he said, okay, he said, I think I know the person you should go to, and her name is Doris Friedman.
Right.
I said, I don't know. And he said, well, she's very important, and she's in charge of city walls. And I said, well, Paul, I know how these things are with important people, especially. I said, could you make the call first? He said he'd be happy to. And so that's how I got to Doris, and she gave me at least 15 minutes. She said, I got about 10, 15 minutes for you. What have you got? And I came in with my stack of photographs, and I said, do you have a little room on your desk? She said, oh, yeah, there's the desk over there. And I said, before, after, before, after, before, after. And I laid them all out. And she stopped and she said, cancel my next project. And
Good.
What
We
year?
started
What year was that? That meeting that you took?
74.
Well, the mural happened in 74, but
Yeah.
I think the
No, it
conversation
was
was
74.
in
It was
73.
in 74.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, maybe it was 73, early 74. Anyway, you know, she immediately caught the importance in her view and mine of what it could be. And she said, well, which one can we do? And I said, of course, the largest one. Already, you know, territorial imperative person. And she said, well, we can't really do that one because there's some problems with that space and there's a filling station on it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she said, what about this one? It was that one on Prince Street. I said, well, that's the second choice. That's okay. So she said, okay, make a drawing 1/2 inch to 1 foot, you know, as accurate as you possibly can, and let me take care of the rest. Okay, she did.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's how I got into public art. If I had to do it on my own at that time, forget about it.
Hmm.
It's just one of those, you know, I guess they
Right.
call serendipitous moments
Were
that
any
happen.
were any of those projects, yours or other people, other artists, Were any of them landmarked?
No.
No.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, the one that we had redone had gone up to landmarks where they said they wanted to do some repointing and some additions to that building, and they said you can do it only if you redo the mural. That was what landmark said. The mural was not landmarked as such, but it was in a landmark district, and the landmarks had some authority to be able to say that. And that's kind of how the project got started. I won't bother you with the 4,000 or 5,000 things that happened after that in the process, but yes, landmarks did do that.
And clearly that project and also the whole trend, I hate to use the word trend, but the proclivity to do such large murals, etc., has proliferated throughout the United States and Europe and elsewhere. It's really swept through, and it continues. It
You're
continues to.
talking about 10,000 imitations now? Or variations. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Yes, no, I know about that. I've never been in a country where I haven't seen some variation of it. In Moscow, I saw it right in the Kremlin once. China, it goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, but who did you imitate?
Pardon?
Who did you imitate?
Yeah, Catherine said, "Who
No,
did I
who?
imitate?" Well,
You
in other
can't
words,
own that.
she's pinning me to the wall, and that's a correct thing to do.
Mhm.
I was in Europe, and I was studying the Renaissance, and I was studying the wall paintings of that period pretty intently, and of course, that was the initial inspiration for the whole idea.
So I can see the relationship between the two of you, as you know, the work relationship,
Absolutely.
vision, etc. But I also see there's a tremendous amount of difference, which uh, Robert's work could be more aptly called hyperrealism, whereas Richard, your work is from the get-go, it's very interpretive and is not really. Am I correct on this? I'm trying to make this into a question. It's going in a different direction. It's not really going for hyperrealism, but for something that's more symbolic, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, somebody called me a conceptual realist.
Uh-huh.
It might even have made some sense to put it that way. Yeah. Um, there's always, a multitude of intents in any project, I think. And I think in public art, especially, that is an important aspect, you know.
And within the realm of public art and large scale wall paintings, murals, etc., um, there's been a lot of abstraction. There's been a lot of all sorts of things have been uh, out there and continue to be out there. Some of them are political. Some of them are to fool the eye. All of them, I guess, to some degree, that's a commonality, are intended to fool the eye to some degree, to be playful.
Right. No, I understand all of that. And I used to be less tolerant of a lot of what I saw, especially in the political realm, because
Mhm.
I was schooled in the post-Greenberg era where you said, "Don't get that sort of
Uh-huh.
thing." But I think in many ways that's a very important aspect of public art, and has been, and probably will continue to be ad infinitum, you know?
Mhm. Do we have other questions or comments out there?
There's one here mentioning that he has some photos of them, of the building when it was gutted after 9/11 that Facebook removed
Yeah, somebody on the
on the chat.
chat said he
Yeah.
lived opposite it and had pictures of it.
Hi, this is, I lived there. That's the view from my window the night of 9/11 when they started getting power back on. Well, we didn't get power for a couple of weeks, but again, that's where I lived for over 20 years. And I think one of the reasons why, well, this is right at the corner of Peck Slip and South Street. So looking in this direction, I had your mural, which there's a sense when I first came and looking around for where am I going to be in Manhattan and this mass of people, and come there and I mean, damn, I mean, I see you've done that in a lot of things, but here's the Brooklyn Bridge and there's the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's sort of, and the other thing is the rest of the wall, which it's crazy. I have a picture of the scaffolding up in front of the mural when they were repairing it after 9/11. And Facebook found it objectionable for some reason recently. I don't know where it is now, but when I looked that way, I had your mural, and if I look around the straight out, I've got the bridge, and down over here I've got the fish market and the East River, and I mean, it has definitely been an influence in the creation of my software Cozy. I mean, there's a sense in which just having the openness of view. And this is, by the way, if I turn my head now, I have Pikes Peak. So I mean, that's
That's your
yeah, that's yeah. I mean, that's obviously that's just a picture I took some time ago. Now, actually, the sun is kind of coming down, but I mean, again, it's always. I mean, having a great view, I think, affects your path of thought, and so I mean, it really, it certainly is an unexpected, sort of very 21st century thing that I can go and we can in a sense meet and because you've been a remarkably big factor in my life. I mean, 20 years when I looked up from the screen.
It says Steven Siegel has a question. Thank you. I'm just
No,
sorry,
I
I'm
really
not a moderator.
appreciate that.
I
And
just like
that's the reward for all the punishment.
It's yeah, really, it just was to have that whole environment there and is just made it a great place to, well, it contributed to the whole scene. If you go to cozy.com, my website, and you go to my Vita, which is linked, you do see, the now the Google Earth, sweeping around the view I had right across the FDR at the East River and so forth. And the cobblestones that were there on Peck Slip and all of that. Just a great environment. As I know just the names. Yeah, Barnaby. I know, and now I see Barry has joined. So
I have a
yeah.
question for Richard, if I may.
Okay.
Great work. Obviously, your ambition has been an inspiration to a lot of people, but I have a question. You must have known when you started doing the large murals that they were not going to be there forever. maybe when you were young, you thought they would be because we all thought we were going to live forever. But looking back now, knowing that some of them are gone and all of them will be gone eventually, and they live on as photographs. How do you feel about their life as photographs?
Well, I'm not a photographer,
No, but in the books.
but I mean, I do think reproducing them has been an important aspect of it. Yes, and as I did say earlier, I did refer to Christo earlier, and he acted in some ways as a kind of a pilot person about public art in many ways, and I understood how important in his thought process and genre documentation was everything, you know, because of the sort of nature of the shortness of the piece. Uh, I don't know if I am as easy a person to let these things go that quickly, and I do fight for their survival at a more extended period than that. Knowing exactly what you said, they are going to be temporal no matter what. So are buildings, right?
Oh, yeah,
So are cities. So are cities.
that's right.
We dig them up. So when we want to take it to its ultimate extent, it's all temporary.
Right. And I guess the follow-up is, how do we understand ourselves where we fit in these timelines, which are obviously infinitely greater than ourselves. Even within our species, they're infinitely greater than ourselves. But
Well, that's a big now. Now you've got about a 300-hour discussion in opening some of those
right,
issues.
right. I've got the lecture.
But
Thank
I
you.
think no about it, not quite on that level every day, thank God. But I mean, it is something we all have to think about. Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Are we done?
Here we go. This is it.